you're in the ranks and somebody's not really trying to get close to you. You ever been through that?
Of course. Well, the main thing is you fulfill your obligation.
Wallah, they pulled back.
Then just fulfill your obligation. You did your best. That's between them. And that's why, inshallah, I'm going to give this dalil. I'm trying to make a little pamphlet out of it. Pass it out. All the dalil on foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder, from Sahih Bukhari, from the Muwatta, right, and any other books that I got it from. I got like 7 pages of dalil on foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. What is the Arabic word? The Arabic word is lazaqa, which means to press, compact, tighten, paste together. So when he's saying to do this with your feet, it means you're supposed to be plastered together. It doesn't mean, it means plastered.
Now, is this only applicable for men? But I know I tend to do foot shoulder to shoulder because I know that when you do that, right, it prevents shaitan coming in between. But does that apply for us as well?
Yes.
When we're in Jamaat?
Yes. Unless the Prophet Muhammad specifically states that this is specific for the women or specific for the men.
It's for the general.
It's general. Even when we get into the Salaah, how you guys hold your hands, there's nothing in there to hold your hands like this. I don't know where this came from. That's not the Sunnah. The Sunnah is right over left. We're going to get into it. Okay, but the same rule applies for the men and the women. The men and the women. Okay, there is nothing different. Okay, it's the same. And the ayah, as it said, this is Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 6. This is when Allah gives the commandment. He said, and when you stand for the prayer, do these certain things, and wash your hands, and wash your face, and wash your head, and do your feet. Okay? Even though there's only 4 things that are specified in this ayat. Now remember, we use the hadith to clarify the ayats. Okay? So we might have an ayat, and the ayat, it doesn't say sniff the nose, it doesn't say this, but we go to the hadith for clarity. Okay? Because the Prophet Allah said in the Quran, in chapter 16, verse 44 or 64. I gotta check it. But Allah said, and it is we that have sent down the dhikr, the Quran, to you, Muhammad, so that you, Muhammad, may explain to mankind its meaning. So from here, the only one that can give the commentary or tafsir of the Quran or explanation of anything is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
But my understanding though, it's okay. I'm glad you brought that up because, the variation of how, the sequence of how the wudu is made from the Quran, that's still okay, right?
That's not sufficient. No, it's not sufficient because the Quran, just like for instance, again, that's why I quoted this ayah.
Well, the reason I say that, and let me finish, the reason I say that is because when you differ in anything, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you refer it always back to the Quran.
And the Sunnah.
And Sunnah as well.
But the Sunnah, I'm just saying that after even that, if you still differ, even in that, you still refer back to the Quran as the last resort.
And the Sunnah.
Yeah.
Chapter 4, verse 59.
I would leave the Sunnah out.
Chapter, you can't leave it out. You can't leave it out. Chapter 4, verse 59. Right? And he said, and if you differ in any matter, refer back to Allah wa Rasuluhu. Right? In kuntum ta'lamun. If you truly believe in Allah on the last day, then you refer back to the Quran and the Sunnah. You can't have one without the other. Right? So you gotta go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. So therefore, the Quran says this. Now, chapter 16, verse 40, which is the Quran, it said that verily we, meaning Allah, he's just speaking in the majestic form, it is we that have sent down the dhikr, the Quran, so that you, Muhammad, may explain to mankind its meaning, the tafsir. So from this ayah, the only one that can explain the Quran is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in explaining the wudu, we go to the hadith and how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained how to do the wudu. Now even though the Quran says this, but the wudu goes into specifics. We have in the Quran it says, and make prayer or make salah, but it doesn't tell you to say takbir. It doesn't tell you to say subhanakallah wa bihamdihi wa shalla. It doesn't tell you to do that. It doesn't tell you about the tashahhud. It doesn't tell you how to taslim to the right. So you have to go to the hadith
Exactly.
to explain the ayahs of the Quran. So the ayah in chapter 5 verse 6, it gives you the basic, it gives you the fundamentals, like yeah,
Right.
but the Prophet Muhammad said, well, let me show you what this means. Let me show you how to do this. Start with the Bismillah, right? The Quran doesn't tell you say Bismillah before you do the wudu. The Hadith does. If you don't know the Hadith, then you don't have a wudu. I read it in the Quran. But the Prophet Muhammad said in the Hadith, he said, there will be a man who sits on his couch and he says, I don't read nothing but the Quran.
I've heard that in my walk. I've heard that.
He said, but I tell you, follow the Sunnah.
Exactly.
I tell you, in another hadith, this is narrated, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he was the Khalifa. He was the Khalifa. And he was sending his wazirs out. Okay? It's either he was sending his wazirs out or he was sending mujahideen out. I think it was the wazirs. But he said, when you go to the different lands, he said they will try to challenge you or debate with you with the Quran. He said, but I tell you to debate with them using the Sunnah. Because those who are the most knowledgeable of the Quran are the ones who are the most knowledgeable of the Sunnah. Because you can't know the Quran without the Sunnah. You can't. Because the Quran, the Sunnah, it explains the Quran. It explains it.
And will never contradict it.
So you can't go with one without the other. Because
Right.
both point.
The hadiths were written in the time of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hafsa, which was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, she had a hadith book. Ali bin Amaanee, he had a hadith book. There's records of hadith books that were in their possession. They were written in the time of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There were some Sahabas who came to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, you know, I forget certain things. Is it okay if I write? He said, go ahead and write. He said, go ahead and write. So he told us, I would go ahead and write down what I said. Right? The only thing, you might have heard some things about Abu Hurairah and Umar ibn al about him getting mad at Abu Hurairah because he said he was quoting too many hadiths. The only thing was that he was fearful that the people might mix up the hadith and the Quran. That was it. It wasn't about nothing else. You know, he didn't want people to get mixing up the Quran with the hadith, to make a distinction between the Quran and the hadith. Okay? Abu Hurairah, we love Abu Hurairah. He was a very scholarly Sahaba. Most of the hadiths, majority of the hadiths were quoted by Abu Hurairah. And why? Because he stayed with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He stayed in the masjid with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he said, the reason why I know so many hadiths is because while everybody else was out in the land chasing money, I was with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam every minute. So I was there with him. I heard everything he said. I listened to everything he said. I was there. When other people was out making money, I was with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So this is why Abu Hurairah, he had a lot of hadiths that he quoted. Okay, just finishing up on the wiping over the socks. It is narrated from Bilal that the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wiped over his socks and turban, and in the hadith transmitted by Isa bin Yunus, the words are Bilal narrated to me. Yahya related to me from Malik that he had heard that Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari was asked about wiping over a turban. He said, not unless you have wiped over your hair with water first. So you can't wipe over your turban, but you have to wipe over your hair first, then put the turban on, or put the covering, the kufi, all of that, and then you can wipe over it. Okay? Shurayh bin Hani said, I came to Aisha anha to ask her about wiping over the socks. She said, you better ask Ali bin Abu Talib, for he used to travel with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We asked him, and he said, the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stipulated the upper limit of 3 days and 3 nights for the traveler, and 1 day and 1 night for the resident. So when you wipe over your feet, when you wipe over your socks, or wiping over your shoes, or wiping over your turban, you can do this for 3 days.
If you're a traveler.
3 days for the traveler, for the traveler, and 1 day for the resident.
Let me ask you a question. What constitutes a travel? Because I travel for a living, so am I always a traveler?
Where is your home at?
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, do you have intentions of going back?
Yes.
Then you're a traveler. You're a traveler.
No matter how long I.
No matter how long.
Oh,
There's many Imam Ahmed. Okay, I'm gonna just quote one of the four imams. Imam Ahmed, with regards to the traveler. There is nothing specific in the hadith that say once you go so many miles, how long do you stay, so forth, so on. You go into the fiqh of Sunnah, Imam Ahmed said that for the traveler, for the prisoner, right? For the captive, for the slave, anyone, that your time of traveling doesn't ever end until you get released out of that situation. The moment, for instance, I'm from Fresno, California. This is my home. This is where I'm born. This is why I'm, the moment I leave up out of here, I'm a traveler. Period. Until I come home. Unless I make a conscious decision that I'm going to move over there. And I check all my residents. I change my mailbox number. I establish, you know what I'm saying, myself there, then I'll become a resident of that place. But once I leave up out of here, I'm a traveler. When you become a traveler, once you leave the outskirts of the city, you become a traveler. Once you hit the freeway, with the intent of going somewhere else, you become a traveler. Okay? Some say the minimum is 3 miles, you know, but even close, that's another city. So you have to. I'm not sure of that one.
But, I mean, it just depends. I mean, you could be going 5-10 miles and you could be a traveler, you know, but I mean, everybody has to use their own common sense.
Some scholars say 3 miles is the least. You know, some say once you leave the outskirts. But whatever is traveling, we know traveling. Like you say, the city, y'all come from Madeira, you're traveling. That's traveling. You could do.
When you're traveling though, and you reach your destination of where you're going, even though you're going to return back to where you came from, it's there is a specific amount of time that is aged that you stay that you have to revert to making the full Salaah, full rakats.
There is no specific, and this is one of the. If we go into the fiqh of Sunnah, this is one of the scholars that come up with it. Imam Ahmed is the one that gave this stance that there is no authentic hadith that says that once you stay so many days that you got to revert back to the resident. To the contrary, he gave hadiths where there were sahabas that went to go fight jihad, and they stayed for 2 years in Kazakhstan, somewhere fighting jihad, and they did the Qasr Salah the whole time. They did the traveling prayer the whole time they were there. So they were gone for years and didn't come back.
If I go to Amport or Salma, Asilia,
You're traveling.
Asilia,
You're traveling.
Madeira,
Travel.
what about the Salah? Short Salah?
Qasr.
Huh?
Qasr Salah.
Asilia?
Yes.
Because some they say, how many miles you pass?
Some say thalatha.
Huh?
Some Imam Ahmed, thalatha.
3 miles?
Yes.
Only?
You become mufassir.
Some they say 40 miles. Some they say 40
Some say
miles.
these are all
You cut.
different madhabs, you know, difference of opinions, but there's nothing specific that says it has to be this many, has to be this many. If you stay there this many days, you return back to a resident. So we know that the rule of thumb, if there's nothing there, then it's mubah, right? We just go off of what is plain. So Imam Ahmed, his stance is that for the prisoner, fighting jihad, a captive or anyone who's traveled but doesn't make but has the intent of going back, you remain a mufassir. You remain a traveler the whole time, regardless of how long you stay. That's the Imam Ahmed.
Didn't they sometimes pray on their horses too?
Yeah. Pray while traveling. Now, the thing is, when you wipe over the feet, when you wipe over the socks or you wipe over the turban, again, for the residents, say for instance you're here, you woke up for Fajr, you made wudu, you put your socks on, you didn't take your socks off all day, you don't have to take your socks off. You can wipe over the socks, on the top of the socks. You do not have to take your socks. I take my socks off. No, you don't have to take your socks off. This is a sunnah. You can wipe over the socks. If you make wudu, you wiped over your feet, then you put your socks on. Somehow during the day you took your socks off, you got to do it all over now. Okay? You got to do it all over now. Because you broke the covering. Okay? And for the traveler, 3 days, you keep your socks on for 3 days without taking them on, you ain't got to take them off. Shoes, same thing. Okay? So the same thing with the wiping off the socks, same thing, you make wudu, you put your socks on, you put your shoes on, you're walking through the land, oh, it's Dhuhr time, oh, we're out at the park, we're out in the public, it's time to make wudu. I make wudu, I can wipe over my shoes and I can make a salat, keeping my shoes on. Keeping my shoes on. Okay, but you can't make wudu, wipe over your shoes and then take your shoes off. And so we have the wiping over the shoes, wiping over the shoes, wiping over the turban. Any questions? Any hijab? Any head covering? There is a hadith for the women, because Aisha al-Anha, as well as some of the other wives of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they wore braids in their hair. They wore braids. And so the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them they don't have to take their braids out when they make wudu or when they make ghusl. They don't have to take the braids out. I don't know about that. Because remember it says if one applies to both. So he didn't say you men, you women. He said one who has braids in their hair, they don't have to take. So you don't have to take your braids out. You guys can keep your braids in and just wet over the hair.